Nigeria is, by far, Africa's largest economy. It is estimated to have a nominal GDP of $447 billion, nearly $100 billion more than second-placed South Africa. Nigeria was once a major exporter of groundnuts, cocoa, rubber. Coffee grows in Nigeria as well as other cash crops. They were once the assembly hub for several car companies. Instead of making cars, they stopped altogether. Depending too much on a single commodity like oil is tantamount to putting all your eggs in one basket. For a long time, the world market price for oil hovered around the $100 per barrel mark. That was the time that the Nigerian leadership should have diversified the economy. Nothing rises forever, so policymakers should have known that oil prices will eventually go down. Unfortunately, Nigerian leadership did not do anything to diversify the economy, so after 2015 when the oversupply of oil caused the collapse of world oil prices, Nigeria's economy followed suit. The discovery of crude oil in commercial quantity shortly after independence from Britain greatly encouraged corruption in what economists have identified as the curse of a resource. But hope is not lost. Nigeria is a strategically positioned country with its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean. If the present administration and subsequent ones can prioritize massive investment in infrastructure, vis-a-vis upgrading and improvement in its road networks, construction of seaports and modern airports that could attract international investors, the country is bound for greatness. The population is young, the currency is cheap, and it has some of the highest entrepreneurial participation rates in the economy, compared to many countries. Currently, the economy is beginning to experience some growth, but the world is still experiencing an oversupply of oil due to an increase in new extraction technologies in the USA. It, therefore, appears that the world price for oil is not going up anytime soon. What this means is that Nigeria, whose economy depends so much on oil, will continue to experience stunted economic growth for the foreseeable future. In fact, between now and 2050, Nigerian will be lucky to achieve an economic growth of 2%. The sad part about all this is that Nigeria's economy alone forms 1/5 of Africa's economy. What this means is that even if the rest of Africa does well in terms of economic growth, an underperforming Nigerian economy alone is able to bring down the collective GDP of Africa to very low numbers. Nigeria and Africa, in general, should instead focus their attention on solving basic problems that do not require a lot of money to resolve. Solving many of these basic problems will automatically eliminate other bigger and costly problems. Some of these basic but critical problems include lack of street names and house numbers and addresses. If they cannot even locate people when looking for them, why will investors grant loans to people if the borrower can just disappear when it comes time to repay the loans, and you cannot find his street address to locate him? Another issue that can be solved easily and does not require too much money is relocating road vendors and passenger stations and putting them further away from busy roads. There is a whole lot of disturbance that goes on around these car stations and spill onto the roads, causing extra traffic jams. If these stations are relocated a few kilometers from the car stations, the disturbances will not spill over and affect the roads. Last but not least, African governments should start organizing their informal sectors and formalizing them. It has been said that the IMF was shocked when they estimated and got to know how big Africa's informal sector is. The International Labour Organization estimates that more than 55% of sub-Saharan Africa's GDP and 80% of its labor force is in the informal sector. Most of these are not accounted for in any government statistics, making estimates of GDP and employment very low. African governments, therefore, have considerable opportunities to invest just a little money into these sectors. Remember, these sectors already exist, so governments do not need too much money to create jobs there. They just need to put little money so these sectors can be well structured to start contributing to city revenues. Large informal sectors like the one in Nigeria often adds to city congestion through informal vending and transport services, but does not contribute to city revenues. These vendors and transportation services should be formalized by building modern markets and passenger stations closer to their present locations, but further away from city streets. Vendors and drivers should then get free spaces or slots within the newly created market spaces without paying for them, but in exchange, they will be required to register their businesses with the cities and pay taxes. They will also be required to sign a contract with the city never to relocate back to the side of the road. These actions will surely decongest the roads and lead to cleaner cities, while at the same time providing the much-needed revenues their cities need in the form of business taxes and licensing fees. Helping to build some of the largest firms in the world as well as government businesses in your neighborhood. GDP and employment numbers. The Nigeria economy is so bad because the country depends heavily on importation. They are not taking advantage of both labor, land, entrepreneurship, FDI, or capital. Labor, they do have the population, both skilled and unskilled labor, but there are no jobs. Land, they do have enough land in abundance, but with a lack of capital and equipment, this is useless. The land has a broad definition as a factor of production and can take on various forms, from agricultural land to commercial real estate to the resources available from a particular piece of land. Natural resources, such as oil and gold, can be extracted and refined for human consumption from the land. The cultivation of crops on land by farmers increases its value and utility. Capital, this is where they have serious problems, poor production. Examples are machines, tools, buildings, roads, bridges, raw material, technology. Now if you can combine the above listed factors together, you will see how fast Nigeria is going to move from a third world country to a second world country or emerging market country. Still, Nigeria, with a population approaching 200 million, has no industrial base to speak of, and is unable to generate more than 10% of its own electricity needs, and has extremely limited infrastructure. Only a handful of decent roads connecting 4 to 5 larger regional cities, no rail, no inland waterways. The only thing working for the country is a relatively well-educated English-speaking population. Oil, in my view, is nothing more than Dutch disease. Dealing with any one or two of the above barriers will unlock the Nigerian economy into exponential economic growth. It may happen in the next 6 months,